Hello there, what is going on everyone? Today we're doing a top 10 video about top 10 ships that I think, of the Federation specifically, that I think are likely to show up in Star Trek Into the Unknown. Now, this is not necessarily my wish list, but this is things I think are most likely to show up first and foremost. It's things that I think make sense for the game and for the market and for consumers and for the timeline and a combination of all of those things. It's not necessarily the top 10 Federation ships that I personally am dying to see, although definitely there's some crossover. There is a lot of ships on here that I am very eager for, but there are also some ships on here that some ships I'm eager for that didn't necessarily make this list. So if we were to transpose like my wish list versus ships that are on here, there'd be a lot of crossover, but it wouldn't necessarily be everything. And of course, the order might be different as well. So with that said, we're going to dive in. Before we do, though, I do want to remind you we are still doing the 12 Days of Life Day giveaway throughout December. We're going to have a winner announced at the end of this video as well. And today will actually be a double. So we're kind of doubling up. There's going to be a bonus winner. It's going to be both a regular subscriber and a patron are going to win rewards at the end of this level as well. So if you're interested in Patreon or our Discord or any social media or any of that stuff, there's links in the down below in the video description. With all that said, let's dive in to the top 10 Federation ships I think are likely to show up into this game. And I also want you to let me know if you disagree with this list, maybe the ordering, or ships that I included that you would not have included, or ships that I had missed that you think should have been on this list. Starting off at number 10, it's going to be the Future Enterprise, or rather the Galaxy class refit from the All Good Things finale of Next Generation. Now you're probably saying, why did you put this ship on this list? Because it does not match the timeline. There's no way this would show up anytime soon, and I think that's slightly off. I think this is likely to show up in maybe the first 2 years of the game. Maybe even within the first year of the game launching, and there's reasons for that. While it doesn't, necessarily mesh with the timeline right away, I think it's one of those examples where something's popularity combined with the fact that they already have a Galaxy class sculpt. So you'd have to add a few things. You'd have to add that, the extra, gun batteries on the front, that third nacelle, a little bit of the hull modification, but you still have the core of the design done. And I think this was such a popular ship. And I feel like and I think that's what puts this on the list. Granted, not one of the ships the game needs right away, but I think it would be good for the health of the game to get some incredibly popular ships that collectors are going to really want, that fans are going to really, really want, just in their collection, because that helps make sure the game can flow. If, for example, you take the sum of all people who buy the game, and if like half of them are buying the game to play it and the other half are just collectors, it's like basically saying like it doubles the sales of your game if you can also appeal to collectors. So that's a good thing, because you need that type of success for the game to kind of fund all the less popular stuff as well. So I think that's one of the things that pushes this one onto the list. But again, I expect some of you may disagree with me on this, but hopefully I've given you my reason why I think this would be on the list, because that's a gorgeous ship right there. Look at that thing. Look at that thing. Can you believe I'm on that bridge of the Enterprise right now? Or am I on the bridge of the Future Enterprise right now? I'm so corny. All right. Let's go on to number 2, and this is a fun one. Number 2. We're kind of taking a bullet from the same magazine here, and it's the Constitution class. I know that this is also something that's far out of the timeline of the game, and I promise you we're going to pay more respect to the timeline as we get into the rest of this list. But also, just nudging out the Future Enterprise again. If you're going to appeal to the fandom, I do expect them to have there to be some classic Trek included in this game. Time travel is absolutely a thing. This game is based on like DS9. DS9 did a time travel episode. So again, they were on they were on this Enterprise. But not only that, again, you can have like a standalone set of missions that involve some classic Trek, and I think between mirror universes, time warps, temporal rifts, Q. There's a million ways to get this ship into the game, to get this ship on store shelves, and I think you want to appeal to classic Trek. Now, there's a lot of different approaches they could go with this. Do you go with the original Constitution class? Do you go with the refit? Like, do you go to the NCC 1701A, which is again many people's favorite Enterprise, and would probably look better as a WizKids model than the original Enterprise? Or do you go with like the JJ Enterprise? There's a lot of different ways to do this. So I leave that up to them. But basically, I think we're going kind of classic Trek, kind of classic Enterprise. Get a way to put Kirk, Spock, and everybody else as crew cards into the game and run some missions with them, because it is some kind of time refit. Again, the developers have talked about time travel is definitely a thing that exists in Star Trek. Would not be outside of the scope of reason for them to do it. And they've done plenty of stuff before with Attack Wing. I don't think licensing would be hard to get some time travel kind of thrown into the game. I think it absolutely works. Let's jump to number 8. The Oberth class. Look, this is a absolute, just a star of what I think this game excels at, and it's at making these non-combat ships really have a shining role to function in this game. Of course, the Oberth has to come into this game. I've always loved the Oberth. It's a small ship. It's a science vessel. It's out there doing research. It's out there doing exploration. It's not a battleship. It's not heavily armed. And it's done so many cool things. It has so many appearances from classic Trek to modern Trek, between the Grissom or the, oh my goodness, the Pegasus is another excellent option to be able to put like Eric Pressman in there and maybe have, again, cloaking is something that's coming to the game. Granted, that phasing device that they have for the Pegasus, for example, is another example of an Oberth class that could work in this game. And I have this one a little bit lower on the list because, of course, I think this one is coming to the game, but it's kind of a foregone conclusion that this one's coming to the game because they kind of have the Oberth as the silhouette for an entire class of ship in the rulebook. So it's not too much of a speculation on my part to suggest that the Oberth is coming. It's sort of a foregone conclusion at this point. So that's kind of why it's a little bit lower on the list. I'm like, because it's not really not a whole lot of risk for me to kind of speculate that this ship is coming. I think it's definitely coming much sooner rather than later. Because they've kind of spilled. If you've read the rule book, you've seen the ship in there. So, for me, it's a question of when rather than if. So I think it will be coming soon. Next up, number 7, the Miranda class, one of the most popular and common ships, a workhorse of the Federation. This one has shown up in the films and the series. It's all over the place. It has served in Starfleet for many, many years. They've been in service forever. And there's a lot of different variations on the Miranda too, but it's definitely something. And there's also been some kind of leaks that it's already planned for a future expansion. So again, one that I think definitely belongs in any Star Trek game, for sure. But the fact that it's sort of already kind of been leaked, again, not a whole lot of speculation on my part that this one would be coming. I think the bigger question is, what do they bring with the Miranda? What titles? Do they go classic Miranda? Do they go like the Reliance? Do they go, with some, some of the folks from Wrath of Khan? Or do they do some more modern, like TNG era, DS9 era crew and personnel maybe that didn't come with it? Because I believe that ship packs that come, whether it's a standalone ship or whether it's coming in a multi-pack, is also going to have some officers and maybe some upgrades and some titles and things like that. So kind of I guess the question is like kind of what version of the Miranda are they really thinking is going to show up here? That's an interesting one to me, because I think you probably, I guess it depends what else it wants to come with. If they're doing, there's some rumors that these guys will be coming along with Klingons, so that does give you some of the Klingon attack on DS9 as an option on how things could go. And so there's definitely a lot of other Federation officers you could do from that time frame. You could bring in some extra TNG heroes. You can bring in some guest stars that maybe don't fit anywhere else, like Captain Jellicoe. There's a lot of things that you could do there, even if he's not necessarily tied to the Miranda specifically, but if it's part of a box set or a multi-pack, definitely works. Let's move on to number 6. We're getting into some juicy ones here. The Intrepid class. Look, Voyager did kind of start out at Deep Space Nine. Granted, the timeline, it's a little bit farther past. Doesn't mean that there weren't Intrepids potentially in service before, before the season premiere of Star Trek Voyager. But there could have been a little bit of overlap there. And again, the game is starting at like DS9 Season 2, which I want to say is like, 2381, somewhere along those lines that year. Is not very far before we first see Voyager in the finale, or not. I mean, not in the finale, the premiere. Again, that's a beautiful thing about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, is that it was this encapsulation of it had both TNG and Voyager. Like everybody went to Quark's bar. Everybody in Star Trek went to Quark's bar at one point. I do think it's only a matter of time before they do a Voyager pack. I think there's a ton of great things that you can do with a Voyager pack, and it would be, I guess, even doing an entire Voyager set based on Voyager. You had multiple other Federation ships that were seen during Voyager, even though Voyager was in the Delta Quadrant. There was stranded Federation ships that they came across. There was holodeck stuff. There's wormhole communications. The Doctor came on, did all of that stuff with the Prometheus. There's a lot of things that you could do. I think Voyager could be its own boxed set. You could also bring in like Kazon ships, or you could bring in some other Delta Quadrant races, which I'm not super crazy about Delta Quadrant races showing up right away. That seems like that could be more of a distant thing, but you could have a standalone Intrepid that would work. Also, with the cool stuff that they're doing with ships now, I could see this having like movable nacelles. It doesn't have to have that, but it would be a cool feature. I don't see any reason why not to do it either. It would be an extra production cost because you have to make movable pieces, but I don't know if it would be that hard to do it. I don't need them to be movable, but if they're not movable, then you have to lock in a pose, right? Or you do multiple sculpts. Like this one is the Voyager specific pack, and this one is just the Intrepid pack or stuff like that. So, yeah, it's interesting. That's a thing. Moving up to number 5, the Akira class. Look, when you watched First Contact and you saw this new ship, engaging with the battle with the Borg, a lot of Star Trek fans were like, that's a cool ship. It has since become a fan favorite, sort of a battleship. It's got launch bays in the front, launching out some shuttlecraft for support, all kinds of cool things. A little bit of a carrier, a little bit of a battleship, and it has a cool design too. This was one of the first times I saw Star Trek in more recent times. I say more recent, so it's not that recent, but in the post TNG time frame, sort of kind of branch out and do a little bit of different. Take some risks, I think, with some starship design, and it worked well. It's not too much of a risk. It's still semi-familiar, but it's definitely a departure from the classic saucer section and nacelles that we've seen. You still have a saucer section, you still have nacelles, but it's put together in more of a sleek and streamlined profile. I like it. I like it. It's a good-looking ship. It's also very popular. I think it would do very well in the game, and it could function a little bit more as a battleship. Again, if the Federation has a lot of exploratory ships, a lot of diplomacy ships, a lot of stuff like that, but they do need some more. They need some battleships too. The Defiant can't fight the whole war for them, so the Akira works well here. Moving up to number 4. You knew it had to be on this list. The Sovereign, the Enterprise E, of course, has to show up on this list. It's going to be a fan favorite. I think it works for a number of reasons. It's iconic. It fits in the time frame. Again, the game kind of starts, the core set kind of starts at the tail end of when we saw the Enterprise D in service. Super popular ship. Of course, it had to show up. But that means everything that comes after does sort of line up with First Contact. That's why we're going to see probably the Akira. But if we're going in the timeline of First Contact, if we're going in the timeline of the Dominion War, the Sovereigns were in service, the Enterprise E was in service, this is also a fantastic opportunity to bring in the rest of the TNG crew that did not show up. A lot of people have been asking, hey, how come Data's not there? How come Riker's not there? They're also on this Enterprise. Perfect opportunity to bring those folks in. You've already got Picard, you've already got O'Brien, you've already got Worf. Well, that works out perfectly because O'Brien and Worf really didn't serve aboard this Enterprise. Well, not for very long. Worf did for, when the movies rolled around, Worf's like, hey, they're filming a movie. I'm going to go back to my other ship for a week, while we're doing these, fighting the Borg or going to save some people on a Fountain of Youth planet, whatever the case. If there's a movie, Worf is showing up. I love how they did that. Very clever writing and a great excuse to bring your fan favorites back. I think the Sovereign is a shoo-in to show up relatively soon. I think this is like within the first year. I think we see a Sovereign announced or at least openly kind of leaked, because I think it has to show up. We're getting very close. Number 3. The California class. The California class, of course, has to show up. Look, I think Lower Decks is very, very popular. And the Cerritos absolutely is popular. And I think it's a fan favorite right now. You want to ride the coattails. All right, I wouldn't be surprised to see this one show up ahead of schedule. Naturally, could be something that could take a little bit longer before it were to show up. I could see them rushing it maybe and doing it right now before this show is on its final season as when I'm filming this, and it could be just a fun expansion where you just do animated characters and look like the Captain's Chair game kind of has some like a Cerritos option in there, and like they have some of the animated styles mixed in with the realistic styles. So I definitely think this is something that easily fits into the game. Because it's just fun. It is a little bit farther past the time setting, but because it's recognizable, it's current, and I think it just works. I think it just plain works, and it would be a super fun one to do. So I think it'd be popular enough that we don't really care too much about the timeline, and also like the show Lower Decks is a tribute. While it's making fun of Star Trek a little bit, it's poking fun gently at Star Trek. It's also celebrating Star Trek, and so they'll take any excuse they can to just mesh. Conveniently, the Cerritos found a time portal to take them back to the Dominion War, and they pop in for a one shot. Like that is absolutely something. Granted, I am not totally caught up with Lower Decks. That may have already happened in the show. I'm a few episodes behind, so. So that may have already happened, but I could totally see that just happening. Like this is a show, this is a ship that is just like they'll make any excuse to just show up whenever they want to do an awesome episode. They've done it with Strange New Worlds. There's all kinds of amazing opportunities for fun that happen with this show, so I could totally see it showing up for that purpose. Moving on to number 2. This is one of my favorites, the Nebula. I definitely think the Nebulas are going to show up in this game for a number of reasons. It's a very popular ship, very iconic, kind of always like a sort of a background ship. It definitely helps fill out a fleet. I definitely want Nebulas in this game, especially if we get into like larger battles. I would not feel comfortable having like an epic battle without, like, if I'm going to have like 5 or 6 ships on the play field, I definitely want at least one Nebula out there to be that perfect background ship, that perfect kind of mid-sized support / well-rounded, little bit of everything, but not super great at anything. There's a lot of different versions of the Nebula too. They can be loaded out. That dish can be converted to more of a combat torpedo launcher, or it can be more of a comms dish. There's a lot of different ways to run a Nebula. There's a lot of different configurations of the ship. But another reason why I rank this one so high and why I think it fits so very well in this list is that this is kind of one of the inspirations for the game as a whole. One of the hallmarks of this game is that you don't have that many officers. And, you're trying to, that's where your points go in this game. You're fielding a fleet to deal with, a mission or a problem or a scenario, and you kind of have a skeleton crew, and you've got your high-ranking officers kind of spread out amongst your fleet. One of the episodes, that inspired this game comes from one of those settings where it's the Klingon Civil War. There was the Romulans cloaking in to aid the Duras family, and they have to spread out officers, and Data takes command of the Sutherland, which is a Nebula, and he's the ranking officer on board, and a lot of the people are kind of green. A lot of the people, it's the perfect setting for this game, and it's one of those things that sort of inspired the way that we play Star Trek Into the Unknown. So I think the Nebula is definitely going to come. Wouldn't be surprised to see Christopher Hobson, which was Data's first officer, that kind of fought him tooth and nail, and it really gave you a very interesting look at how some ships' bridges don't necessarily flow quite as smoothly as the flagship, the USS Enterprise, does. It was just a great ship. It was left me with a soft spot. So very cool, very cool. Little fun fact about the Nebula. One of the first times I ran a Nebula was in the game by Decipher, Star Trek, the card game, customizable card game, and you had Nebula class vessels, and they were pretty good. But then you had a unique one for the USS Sutherland, and it was always cool that you always wanted to have the named version. So yeah, you could have a Galaxy class, but if you got the Enterprise, it was even better. But you can only run one of them, right? So the Sutherland, which was the unique Nebula, was actually worse than the generic spammable Nebula. So you always wanted the Sutherland in your collection, but you actually didn't ever want to use it in your deck because it was worse. I mean, there were some, as the game went on, there were some use cases, like you might want to have a unique ship that could have its named captains for other benefits and things like that. But in general, the Sutherland, because it had a dysfunctional crew that Data had to kind of fix, the Sutherland was a worse version. So it would be really cool if they did a version of the Sutherland that like maybe it gave you points back, but it was actually like made the ship slightly worse. Like it started off with like takes one crew damage or something. It starts off with a lower crew value at the start of the game or something to that effect to kind of replicate how. But maybe you get some points back as a gameplay trade-off. But I just thought that was a really cool little anecdote about how the Sutherland was not the best Nebula in the fleet, but they were trying to like put together everything they could. It's a fun little thing. All right, we're moving on to number one. Any guesses? Any guesses? Before we do number one, let's go ahead and do our giveaway. Let's do our giveaway right now. So this is your time for you guys. If you want to pause the video, let me know what your guess for number one is, or see if you are a winner. Now, how do you enter to win these giveaways? Well, one, you can be a patron. For two, you can be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. So we have two winners. And what are we giving away today? Star Trek Into the Unknown stuff. These are foil Benjamin Sisko crew. So this is very cool. So we have some very cool promos for Star Trek Into the Unknown. I thought it was appropriate for today's video. And our two winners are, let me find them. There we go. Boom. All right. Subscriber Jordan Beard 6687. Congratulations, Jordan. And patron Kevin McHorney. Go ahead and shoot me an email at mailcrabbok@gmail.com. Let me know what you won, and I will get your shipping information, and we'll get those shipped out to you just as soon as possible. Anything that goes unclaimed for 30 days, if you don't shoot me the email, it's going to roll over into extra Patreon giveaways. So patrons get like a lot of extra chances to get stuff, early access to stuff, and Discord roles, and behind the scenes posts and stuff like that. So, and if you're a wing level or higher, you also get your name in the credits at the end of the at the end of my videos. So that's another cool little perk. So it's my way to thank you guys. But yeah, so let's move on to number one. Number 1 is the Excelsior. I definitely expect an Excelsior pack. Look, the Excelsior is a beautiful ship. It's been in service forever. It is also a very popular ship. And fun fact is, it's one of the most seen ships in all of Star Trek. The models were in good shape. I believe in Next Generation alone, outside of the Enterprise itself, it was the most commonly seen ship on the show. Excelsiors are in service everywhere. I think they're even more abundant than the Nebula. And it is a beautiful ship. You could do the Enterprise B if you want to modify the Excelsior a little bit, but just do Excelsiors. You have so many, you could do the Excelsior. You could do Sulu if you're doing old school Excelsior. Right? You can do modern Excelsiors. You can do the Hood. You can do a lot of that stuff. So a lot of it works. It's just a very, very iconic ship. It's a beautiful ship, and it fits everywhere. And it's well-rounded. So, it can perform in this game in a wide variety of capacities. I think it's a great ship to be able to do. And I'm curious if they'll do any kind of transwarp stuff with it as well. That could be a fun thing. It could be like a special bridge action that you can do. I don't know. I don't know what they would do with the Excelsior, but it could be very, very fun. So that's my top 10 for the Federation of what I think is going to be coming sooner rather than later, what I think fits the best for upcoming ships into Star Trek Into the Unknown. Now, again, not necessarily my wish list. I'm not personally a big original series fan. Not to say I have anything against the original series. I love the classic crew and everything, but I'm a much bigger DS9 fan and TNG fan, and I like a lot of the TNG and beyond stuff is my personal favorites. So I would have leaned a little bit more into that and a little bit less away from other things. I might have wanted a Dyson sphere on there. But no, but maybe that'll be a subject for a future video, is like what my personal wish list, because I think there's always sometimes a trade-off, and I personally wouldn't have had an Excelsior at number 1, but I would have probably had an Excelsior on there at somewhere, but it would not have been that high. I think it fits very, very well, and because of how common Excelsiors are, I think it's definitely one of those models that they're definitely gonna do, and works in multiple timelines. It just works so much. I think you get a ton of value out of doing an Excelsior, and I think it's very, very likely to show up. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. You can also join our Discord and keep the discussion going. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are all-stars, out of this world superstars, and I thank you so much for your continued support. You help make this channel possible. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. So say we all. And always wash your socks.